Oh, hey, welcome to Intangify. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. I'm an intellectual property attorney by day, but apparently also by day, I do podcasts and I like to talk to people who deal with intangible aspects of business, not necessarily intellectual property related sometimes, but other times it's really about other things that help businesses succeed that are beyond the assets, the physical things that those companies or entrepreneurs have. My guest today is Derek Newton. Hi, Derek.
Hey Matthew, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to have you here. I think the stuff I learned about what you're doing is really very interesting. And just for the audience benefit, I'll tell them that Derek Newton is a journalist, but has also an entrepreneur. Has launched a platform called Verify My Writing, and we are going to talk all about the intangible aspect of authentic voices. Derek, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, happy to. I've been writing professionally for about 15 years or so, mostly covering education, but with an emphasis on fraud, actually. So academic fraud, credential fraud, workplace fraud, and people who do bad things, misrepresent their test scores or their degrees or their certifications. Um, and so when AI came along, this was really sort of a brand new thing for a lot of people, but especially for me. One, I was a writer, made my living producing content. So that was very interesting that AI could do that now. And also having a very keen eye on how people were using technology to do bad stuff. And so I immediately latched on to this is going to be a problem in both areas, content production and an opportunity for malfeasance. So I pay close attention to that. A few months after the first generative AI programs came online, the first AI detection programs came online. They were primitive. They weren't very good. They were okay, but nothing that you would say, wow, problem solved. Um, what's happened, though, I think, while the public hasn't been paying attention to that, is that the AI itself has gotten very good. The AI detection capacities have also gotten very good. They are now technologically really advanced and really, really accurate, a few of them, at spotting AI text. Many of them aren't, unfortunately, and we can get into that. But there are probably a half a dozen companies that produce really, really good AI detection, and I've been writing about that in my newsletter and in my journalistic outlets for several years now. Uh, and it occurred to me as a writer, going back to the intersection that I had, that I thought the way most people were using AI detection technology was backwards. Most people wanted to use it as like a policing entity to like point the radar gun at the intersection and issue tickets. Like too much AI, you're good. You need to slow down. Go back and do it again, right? That this policing function for AI detection. And I was skeptical that would work because most people who were asked to do that job never wanted to do that job. This was extra work for them that they didn't sign up for. This wasn't why they got into publishing or being a book agent or making movies. And so it was unlikely to work well. And it occurred to me as a writer that what I would prefer as somebody who actually does the work of writing is if I could just get somebody to stamp my work, that I did my homework, that I ate my vegetables, that I did it the right way, that I didn't use AI. If I could get that at the front end, all of this would clean up for me. The agents, the editors, the publishers who had questions would see it when it came in, and they wouldn't have to question me. We wouldn't have to have a debate. We wouldn't have to get into any of that. We could just get to, hey, did what I write, did you like it? Was it terrible? Can we start there, right? Not, hey, did you use ChatGPT or any of these other services? And I thought that was a better way to go. So after a few months, after about a year of that, I started the company to do that.
Well, so a lot of thoughts occurred to me as you were speaking. First of all, I wanted to tell you, as someone who teaches, I work as a professor in a couple law schools. This has come up time and time again with regards to exams and assignments, and it is a problem from the education community perspective, right? You know, we're almost starting from the premise that our students are going to use AI. How do we prevent them from using AI? Sort of going back to your policing. Let's find out if they did use AI after the fact and punish them, those sorts of things. And it is like stressful as a professor to have to worry about that. Um, because you assume that when you have someone studying, that they actually study for the right reasons, that they want to learn, and therefore they're going to, you know, put the work in so that they actually learn something as opposed to plugging something into their generative AI platform in order to do the least amount of work. Unfortunately, there are all kinds of people, right? And not necessarily bad actors, but there are people who want to take the shortcuts. So it's something that we see in the education field, and I assume you've seen that from that perspective as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been covering that specifically, academic fraud, cheating, academic integrity for a long, long time. That's the primary focus of my newsletter, in fact, is academic integrity. So I've seen it. To round back to the point, I must have had 24 conversations with 24 different professors who have said, I don't teach to be a cop. That's not why I that's not why I signed up to get in the classroom or to mentor young minds, right? This isn't I recognize that there's some sort of obligation on me for the, rigor of the program and the integrity of the work. I recognize that. I'm fine with that. But I have no interest, never had any interest in being a police officer 24/7 and tracking down and being an investigator and filing reports and testifying at hearings. This isn't if this is the job, I signed up for the wrong job. So I'm completely sympathetic to that. And that experience, again, is why I knew that if we were expecting publishers or journal editors or others to take on this role of an active police agent with AI detection, it was doomed to be, at best, ineffective, if not completely useless. And I think you've seen evidence of that, right? I've spoken to the agents and editors and publishers too, and they said very similar things. Look, I got it. I wanted to be a literary agent so I could work with authors and tell great stories and expand minds and like do this thing that I love. I didn't want to be a literary agent so I could call an author who I loved and say, I think you used AI on this, and have them deny it. And now where are we? This is not the relationship I want in the context of my life. And so when that's the reality, and it is real, asking them to do the policing is pretty pointless, right? They're at best not going to do it well or not consistently. And I don't blame them, right? That's not their job. That's not the job they wanted. So there's got to be, so we can either ignore it and just let the system collapse where it collapses or find a better answer.
Yeah, I mean, as a professor, I have a hard enough time dealing with having to grade my students, let alone wanting to make sure that they didn't cheat and make sure they didn't use AI and all those things. So I totally get that. In the early days of generative AI, as people became more and more concerned about this type of issue, a lot of people, including myself, when we would post stuff on social media, would make a point of using a hashtag and say, human author, not AI, things like that to help people recognize, because so much stuff is AI generated and it seems like increasingly so. Um, let me just make sure that I'm not, or that I wrote is not. But there's a vibe to that sort of an analogous vibe to that I struggle with, which is I don't know if you how you feel about this, but when you're talking to someone and they say, um, well, to be honest with you, I want to do X, Y, or Z. This is what I think. Um, when I hear things like, to be honest with you, I feel like, well, are you trying to tell me that you're not always honest? You're not always transparent. So now, if you don't put this hashtag not AI, or if you don't, let's say, certify every document you put out there, is it going to be assumed that it is AI?
Yeah. And unfortunately, maybe, is the answer. I've had several publishers of books and publishers and editors of academic journals, research journals, scientific journals, uh, tell me directly that they know this is a problem. They see that our solution, the one we're offering, is a way to address it. But they're really, really afraid that once they start putting certifications on work, It's going to call into question everything they've done for the last 4 years. And that is a can of worms that they do not wish to open. Uh, and again, I don't blame them. I'm not saying any of these people are wrong in their perceptions. If I were in their chair, I would probably feel very similarly. Um, so yes, I've heard this, right? Like if we get into a certification, what does a non-certification say? My answer would be just that it isn't certified, right? There may be a dozen reasons that somebody didn't do that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's AI. It just means it hasn't been certified as human. I can make that sort of distinction, um, but I think the market is gravitating towards that, and I think that's coming one way or another. I was watching TV the other night, and there was a Ford commercial on with some big truck and American flags and people climbing a mountain and a screaming eagle, very patriotic stuff, right? And it had images of the Boston Tea Party, and the fine print came up and said some performances are AI generated. Uh, Ford is voluntarily disclosing AI use in their commercials. When you go to YouTube now and scroll through videos, you see maybe 1 in 10 in the description says no AI used. Um, the market is on its own coming to the fact that we should at least disclose, right? The problem with these, whether it's Ford or YouTube or any of the others, is they're voluntary. Even you using hashtags on social media posts is voluntary. And the research shows that the people who are most likely to insist they didn't use AI are the people using AI. So, there's value in saying you didn't use AI, but ultimately that's a do I trust you, right? Because if you're going to use AI and misrepresent it as your own work, you're certainly going to lie about having misrepresented it as your own work. Um, so without some way to check, without some way to measure it, to validate it, all the assurances that we have on all these platforms are really only as good as the person making the assurance. And I don't know that if I've known you for 15 years, that may carry weight with me. But if I just met you and our only engagement is on a social media platform, I don't know how far that goes for me. Does that make sense?
It does, but I gotta say, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with this. Um, you know, X, formerly Twitter, um, has had a system in place for a long time now where it verifies accounts with a little blue check mark, which is supposed to, say that this is really the person who they claim to be, right? And in the early days, only like well-known people could get those. But as I understand in recent years, yeah, yeah. But as I understand in recent years, there has been an ability essentially to purchase the check mark, the verified status, and it has opened up more broadly, which has come into criticism. But at the same time, it dilutes the value of, hey, this is a verified account. And where does that come into play with the service that you're offering? Um, right? If yes, so there is going to be a some sort of a certification. We'll talk about what exactly you're doing. But AI. Well, I don't want to say AI is smart, but AI does pick up and learn things. And so when AI starts training off of people's certified documents, aren't we going to start seeing some sort of a thing that looks like a certification from the AI itself,
Will the AI start certifying its own work as legitimate? Sure, it probably will.
or
But
disguising it as certified,
yeah,
right?
sure, and it may. I can't rule that out. I think that'd be very clever. That's where you have to have, in my opinion, a trustable or trusted third party independent entity that can say, no, we independently, we don't have we don't have a horse in the running the track here, right? We're not for the author or against the AI. We're simply measuring and scoring. Someone in that process who can say, well, I recognize that the AI said itself it was good, but that's not us. We didn't say that. If anybody asks, we would say this. Um, that sort of independent arbiter, I think, becomes essential in a world where you have voluntary disclosures, which I don't know what they're worth. The AI may start certifying its own work. You have a whole lot of noise markets tend to create trusted signals wherever there's a lot of noise. And I think that's gonna happen here. I hope it happens with us, but I think it's inevitable to happen at some point, probably pretty soon.
So why should it be an entrepreneur and a small business that's launching, um, someone like you, as opposed to a larger, more well-established organization like the Better Business Bureau or something like that?
The honest answer is it shouldn't be. Um, it, it I spent a long time going to the big tech companies who are in this space, asking them if they had any interest in doing this, ideally with me, but even without me, I thought it was necessary as a writer and as somebody who understood fraud. And universally, the top 4 or 5 providers in this space said no. This wasn't their business model. This wasn't their mission. They viewed it as not just inconsistent with where they viewed themselves. And so after getting those no's, I went back to 2 or 3 of them and I said, well, if you're seriously not going to do this, do you mind if I do? Would you license your tech with me to go spin this up? Because I think this is necessary and I think it's going to be successful. And 1 or 2 of them said yes, fortunately. I think it would have been better had a Better Business Bureau or a known entity come in and said, we see a mess coming. This is what we're going to do. Um, but it also has been advantageous that I'm a writer. That helps. It gives me message credibility with the community that I think needs to use this. And it also helps that I, as a journalist, have been covering this for a while. So I do have a sense of who are in my opinion, granted, the better performers, the companies that behave best, have the best product, and are in the right space. Because as I sort of alluded to earlier, in AI detection, I would bet 90% of the AI detectors you'll find in a Google search don't work, or they are intentionally misleading. They will give you a false score on purpose because they're essentially fraud engines. What they want to do is tell you that your writing is AI and then sell you a solution to fix it. Almost always they say, oh, your document's 90% AI. You can humanize it or paraphrase it for $5 and not get flagged on an AI detector, right? That's their business model. And that's just dishonest. But nobody's regulating that market right now. So they're everywhere. So if you Google search AI checker or AI detector, the first 30 results you get are going to be these fraud websites that are going to give you a 90% or 100 AI no matter what. And unfortunately, this has complicated things because this is why you see people telling other people all the time on social media, or sometimes it gets into actual media, that AI detectors don't work. They say, I wrote this 1,000-word document myself. I put it into an AI checker and it came back 90% AI. They're junk. Well, they're not junk. The good ones are really, really good. The ones that are trying to rip you off are junk. And getting the public to discern the difference is complicated and takes effort. And so that's been a sort of an uphill messaging for us. But that's why you see that. That's why you see constant pushback, at least I do, from people saying AI detection doesn't work. They're not using good systems.
So the thing that worries me is, um, with the speed in which generative AI has been adopted and the amount of content that's now being created, um, your business, um, needs to be able to scale so quickly. I mean, I'm envisioning, I like, from what I could tell, we should talk about what your business model is. But from what I could tell thus far, from looking at your site, um, essentially there's a per article, let's call it an article, a per document fee, right? But let's say, well, here, I'm in a law firm. I have clients that are concerned that that my work is AI generated. I have clients that want me to use AI, and I have clients that, would be concerned or would want to be notified. I could envision a value in some sort of, as long as it was something I could preserve confidentiality, that could do all of my writing whenever I send something out, all of my professional writing, whether it's articles that I'm putting out into the media or it's client communications. Um, to give comfort to those readers, right? About the trust. So how would you scale that? I mean, that would literally be hundreds uh, per person, uh, in a day. And then let's take that globally. I mean, you're talking about billions or trillions of articles, documents, messages being sent all over the place. In an ideal world, right? You would want all of those to be properly certified. So how do you scale this?
That is the nightmare I want, because if we're having to scale that quickly, we've hit, right? We've done a great job as an entrepreneurship. We found the market, there's a need, and we're filling it. You know, eh, our revenue and use is going up quite quite dramatically. Not that dramatically, not as dramatically as you say, but we're in the range of 4x month over month at this point, which is good growth. And if we suddenly got flooded with a billion documents in a day, I feel very certain our website would break. So hopefully it doesn't happen overnight. But as we see the growth come, we can add more resources, and we would have the revenue coming in to build up back end capacity. So, you know, it would be a management challenge, but it certainly is something I think we could navigate if we get so lucky as to have to solve that problem.
Well, do you offer other business models apart from the per document approach? Subscription, as an example?
Yeah, we do and we can. Yes, is the shortest way to do that. We're new, and so we can and have customized packages for people who have specific needs. If you're not a novelist and you have the manuscript you just finished, you want to get scanned, plus the one you wrote, last year, you might as well get that scanned. That's easy. That's 2 transactions for us, and you come back when you have your third one, right? But somebody who does a large volume, publishers, for example, um, yes, we package things that make sense for them.
Okay. So let's back up and talk a little bit about what the mechanics we're talking about here are. We have this concern. We we recognize that it'd be valuable to have certification of human authorship. I mean, as an IP attorney, like I'm just thinking about the US Copyright Office, how much they would want to have something like this, right? Like let's just auto check everything that comes in every application, at least for written works. But okay, what are the mechanics? I am an author. I have written a lovely article all about copyright in the age of AI, and I want to make sure people know that it was me who wrote that article. So what do I do, and how do I get this certification?
Yep. Super easy. We've tried to keep it as simple as possible. You go to our website, create a free account. That's like every other website you sign up for, your email and your name and that sort of thing. And then you upload your document, a PDF file or a Word file, either one. And then, as you mentioned, our pricing system is based on the document length. So if it's War and Peace, it's going to be, expensive. I think that our highest price point is $90, but that's literally for War and Peace. One of those novels is written every year. And we've had, by the way, 0 of those at that price point. It doesn't happen. Um, for a full length commercial novel, I think it's $65, but for the type of thing you're talking about, it's $10. So once you upload it, it'll verify like word count and show you the document. Yes, that's the one I meant to scan. You click scan and pay. It'll ask for your information to charge you the $10. When you put your credit card or your whatever information in to pay, it takes away, and it takes on a document of 1,500 words, 1,000 words, it takes about 12 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. It'll scan it. It'll give you a score, a human score. That's another reason we're different. We don't score AI. We score humanness. So you want 100. You want 100% human on our system, or 97.8, whatever your number is. And then once you have that score, you can make a choice, right? You can say, oh, that's great. That's what I wanted. I know I wrote it. I got 100%. There was never any question about this. But I want to share this with my client, or I want to share this with my editor, or I want to share this with person who's next in the delivery stream for this content. You can download a certification that has information about the document, word count, when it was scanned. It has a unique QR code that matches to that document exclusively. Or you can get a badge, basically a more social media friendly logo that has a QR code in it, links to the same certification, but doesn't have all the data about the document because no one needs it. You can only get the badge, the certified human written badge, if you score 95% or more. The certification is available for any score, but the badge is only available if you did 95 or better. So that's basically how it works. And you could get both if you wanted, but if you're passing it along as workflow, the certification document is better. If you're about to post it in a magazine or on LinkedIn or something, the badge is going to be a whole lot more useful for you.
Is this an AI detection tool? Is it AI? How does it do the evaluation of my humanness?
Yes and no. I don't know if there's a clear definition, a clear line of definition between machine learning and AI. That's not my skill set, but it is wherever that line is, it's much closer in the machine learning camp than the AI camp. Maybe they're the same thing. If you think they're the same thing, or if they are the same thing, then yes. But it is machine learning. So what these systems do is they spend a lot of time not digesting human written work, but digesting AI created material. So they learn to recognize it and decode the patterns behind the math that's driving the AI engine. Because ultimately, these are math. The AI providers use algorithms and they dip into their large language models to pull the words and phrases out that they think fit there. And anytime there are mathematical rules about how to construct that, machines can spot it by paying attention to what math is being used to construct it that way. So it's a machine learning system primarily that uses large language models, but primarily large language models of AI text as opposed to human text. It does have human text in the model, so it can differentiate. So it knows, well, when I see this pattern, I don't flag that. That's human. But when I see this pattern over and over and over again, yeah, that's clear. That's a flag. And that's how that works.
Does it train on the documents that people are uploading?
No, is the shortest answer. We don't know whether they're AI or human written until after we scan them. But then they stay with us. They don't go anywhere. They don't go into either category of AI documents or human written documents. They don't find their way into LLM systems. We don't do that, and our providers don't either. We have them sign with us that's something they guarantee.
Okay. And what about what if there is confidential information in the document or um, particularly protected information like health records or things of that nature? How do you deal with what might be in the content?
Yeah, it sits on our secure web server, which is like everyone else's in the world is AWS, right? I wish we could say we built the next NORAD and it's in the bunker like that. But I mean, we have the same level of security that Amazon guarantees for everyone else. Um, and it sits on our server. That's it. There isn't any access to it from anybody outside our organization. The systems we use to scan, get it so they can scan it, and they have the same closed server systems on their end. We retain the files for two reasons. One is a secondary check. Even having studied fraud for so long, even if you have a certification that travels with a document and it says this document is 2,000 words and it was scanned, yesterday, and you look at the document and it's 2,000 words, you might be okay. I get that. But eventually what's going to happen is you're going to get a document that's 2,000 words was scanned in January, and the document you're looking at is 2,600 words. And you're not going to have any sense of the code is good, the certification is good, but you're not going to be sure it matches this specific document. Something has changed in the custody, or after they got it certified, they went back and made other edits, right? So we keep the primary source so we can run just a scan of similarity, right? This is exactly the same document that was scanned in January. You got nothing to worry about. Oh, this document's been 40% altered since it got scanned, and here's what's changed, right? So if you are a book publisher and you have in your contract that people can't use AI, book publishing takes months, if not a year, from the point you get a manuscript to a point that it arrives on shelves, right? The certification is going to be 6-8 months old, and it's gone through probably 3 editing firms, 2 publishers, 1 marketing professional, right? By the time the person's ready to press go on the publishing order, they may want to have somebody check, okay, is the certification still matching word for word what we're about to buy here? Yes, it is. Okay, we're good. No, somehow it got 20% changed. Okay, time out. Let's figure out what happened and let's adjust. So we keep the documents in our system for that reason. But also, we have a very easy process that lets people delete them. If they want them gone, they're gone. But we tell them, of course, by deleting, we won't be able to secondarily verify later. If you don't care, that's fine.
Right. Um, so with regards to the confidentiality piece or the information, restricted information or private information type of situation, apart from what you've said, is that something that people can verify on your website? In other words, do the terms and conditions make clear, or privacy policy make clear about the level of confidentiality of the documents when they submit them?
I'm going to double check. They should. I think they do. Our very nice and thorough lawyers wrote them, so I would I expect that they would, but I will double check as soon as we hang up. I haven't checked that specifically, um, but I also guarantee you, if for some reason it's not, they will be added. There's no reason they shouldn't be in there.
Oh, yes. So So I upload documents. Are there restrictions on what can be in those documents? In other words, are these limited to particular styles, particular languages, particular types of written material? What's the scope?
Yeah, great question. Uh, Format, there isn't a scope. I can tell you that AI detection technologies lose accuracy on things like recipes and poetry. Um, but they lose accuracy from 99.9 to like 97, right? They do lose accuracy if you're uploading poetry, right? So I don't want to say format doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's still gonna be good. What we can't do, other companies can do this. We don't, is do video, photos, audio. We can't check. We don't have any capacity for that. And that's basically because when I started paying attention to this area, it was academic fraud and writing. And as a writer, that's what I knew, the technology, I knew the companies, I knew what was going on. I have no background in video at all. I wouldn't even know how to start that conversation. So we don't do that. Languages I have to check. I think we have 22 languages that we can check in currently. They're the big ones. Most of the Romance languages, Chinese, Korean, I believe, Farsi is one, but it isn't clearly every language because there are, I think, 1,000 different languages. So that is on our site. So most of the time, I would say language isn't going to be a problem. But if it is an unusual language, our system just won't run on it, and we would apologize and refund your money.
So you give them this badge. We talked about a QR code and some other stuff. Um, and we talked about, gee, maybe the AI would start making their own badges, and there'd be sort of this I don't know, race to the bottom or competition. What comes into the minds of consumers as actually being a true badge of authenticity of human authorship? Um, and hopefully that's your model and your business. But the other thing that comes to mind in terms of thinking about bad actors out there is, right, if there's a value to having this type of badge, then aren't people going to replicate it? Aren't people going to make their own versions of it? So forget the AI doing that. Maybe the AI will design it. Maybe the AI will not be involved. But if I wanted to put a document out there and say it was human authored, I could make a little badge and stick it on my document. w- You know, so I get that there's this element of long-term trust and establishment kind of that you're building. But how do you propose to deal with that issue? Because it does really dilute and crowd the field for you.
Yeah, sure. There are 8 or 10, maybe, I'm guessing, but there are more than a handful of services or companies who are issuing badges now. All of them, to my knowledge, don't check. They are I promise badges. So you can go to their websites, pay the fee, literally click the box that says I promise I didn't use AI, and you can download the badge. Again, great. I appreciate the people who are doing that honestly and trying to demonstrate faithfulness in this marketplace. But that's so open to the bad actors so as to be pointless in my view. So we watch that. Our credentials and badges, you could fake them. You could go to, Photoshop or something and take one and make it and stick it on, or you could take one from another document and stick it on. But it's not going to match, number one. The word counts are going to be off, the date and time scans are going to be off, and every certification we issue has a unique code that is trackable in our website. So if you just cut and paste or copy that code, go to our website, you can see right on the thing, scan a work or verify an existing work. You click verify, drop that code in. It's going to tell you the author's name, the title, the word count, the date it was scanned. It's going to give you a whole bunch of information about that. And pretty immediately, you're going to realize this is not the document I'm looking at. This code for this certification does not match. Just looking at it, if you don't go to certify it, and by the way, checking certifications is free. You don't even need an account for that. Anybody can go to our webpage anonymously and check a certification that's out there. Get that information on a document. That's our best way to prevent fraud. We've talked about putting that data in a blockchain format as well to give it even more security, but we're not there yet. Maybe soon. We're talking to a couple people about that. But we're going to secure it in every way we can because, as you say, the credibility, the trust of the certification itself is the business, right? If people can fake it or if they can get it by lying, cheating, or stealing, it has no value.
Yeah, so the trademark attorney in me is worried about, this badge, this certification, and
and
how
how
you
you
as a small
nowadays
business,
having
particularly there are
uh,
if there end up being a lot of these sort of copycat type of badges out there, how you will protect and enforce your rights. Do you have a plan in place there?
We are in process of getting the actual phrasing better than I do, the certification mark through the Copyright Office. For our trademark office. Yes, it's been a little. Well, it's not tricky, but it's every time you go through this, you learn something. At least as me, you know it all already, so you don't learn much. I learn something every time. Um, but for example, because we use a QR code in the logo, the QR code linking to the very specific document that badge attaches to, we couldn't include that in our mark because it changes every time. It had to be only the surrounding piece, as you're nodding, yeah. So it had to only be the surrounding piece that we could seek protection for. So we're doing that. Um, but ultimately, I don't know what legal protections might be available to us if somebody tried to really strenuously copy our images and our marks and our certifications. But at the end of the day, those are either going to be one of two things. They're either not going to work when people go to check that they're valid, right? They won't be valid. So they wouldn't have much value beyond the first inspection, or they're going to have to use substandard technology to try to check the work by using one of these bad systems that I've mentioned before. And that's going to be a complete disaster very, very quickly. Because, you know, people know what's in their documents. They know, right? You know if you used AI. You know if you didn't use AI. You know if you used AI to edit one paragraph or use Grammarly for help. You know what you did. And so if you wrote something without any AI at all and you get back a 60% AI, you're going to lose your mind. And you're going to complain and you're going to tell everybody you meet. And so these companies that are built on technology that's that fragile and that inaccurate don't have a long runway before they just get overwhelmed with complaints and refund requests and collapse. That's why it's important not only to be the mark that people recognize, but to be accurate. I mean, to know what you're doing, because again, people know. And I don't know that I've mentioned this anywhere else, but about 40% of the documents we scan are 40% AI or more, which has really surprised me. I expected people coming, with handwritten work, wanting the certification. That's not how it's happening. A significant chunk of what we're scanning is coming back, some 100% AI. I don't know whether they're checking the checker. I don't know whether they're like, can you really spot this? Yeah, we can. We can really spot that. Or if it's a third party, right? You are, it's the same analogy I give you, but you're a literary agent and you got the first chapter of a book that you're interested in, but you have a suspicion, so you're going to go check it, and it comes back 90% AI. I don't know whether I don't know which of those is happening, but I have been surprised um, when people come into the system and scan things in their heavy AI. Just this week, somebody came in and scanned maybe 5 or 6 different documents. 3 of them, I'm not exact on the numbers, but a few of them were heavy AI, 60, 70% AI. And the person got certifications for them. I don't know why you would do that, to be honest. I'm sure they're very smart people and they have a very good reason for getting something certified as 40% human. But it's interesting to watch how this tool is being used in real time as opposed to how I imagined it functioning.
Yeah, in my world, having encountered lots of sophisticated bad actors and how creative they can be, I'm thinking of all the ways that if I were one of these bad actors, what I would do, and how I could try to get around the verification piece that you have, um and benefit. And so I kind of I'm envisioning for you, and I'm not your lawyer, right? But I'm envisioning for you, um, not only about what protection you sought in the United States, which is great that you're pursuing that certification mark in the United States. Hopefully, you are going to pursue it in the other countries, at least where you have the languages that are spoken, or that you're likely to have people using it. Um, but I'm also um, thinking about having uh, an enforcement arm. Like there has to be an element of people are going to go out there and find the people who use a similar certification mark as yours that looks like it's you, and shuts those down. And having to set aside kind of a budget for that to make sure that you can police, because the value of your brand will be this badge, and not solely, I mean, the technology behind it, but if people are gonna use it and rely on it, um, you probably have a real significant enforcement, angle and protection angle to pursue.
I think you're right, and part of me hopes you're right in a weird sort of way because that means we've gotten big enough and accepted enough that people feel that they think there's some value in trying to mimic or steal what we're trying to do. But I absolutely think you're right. And the bad actors is I can give you again. It's my area of passion. This is the reason, and this comes up from time to time and with Verify My Writing, right? People say, well, you give me a score, you don't tell me where the problem was or what the problem was. So I got an 80, but I don't know why, right?
Yeah.
We do that. We don't share that information on purpose. Because having observed academic work for a long time, right? I know what people who are trying to just get in under the wire do. If you tell them where the problem is, they go back and edit that and they check it again and they edit it again and they check it again until they can get it from an 80 up to a 94, right? And this is not the sort of behavior that I philosophically want to encourage. It's good business, right? If they want to pay me every time they scan it to move it up 2 points, I'm happy to take their money, but also I'm not, right? That's not the kind of business. That's not the that's not the business we want to be in. So we've taken steps like that, like also not. You don't have to dig too hard, but we don't identify our tech partners on our homepage. Um, you have to ask us who they are, and I'll tell you. I mean, it's not a state secret. But the other reason we don't do that is because I've seen, again, in an academic setting, very smart people who want to take shortcuts. Most of these technology systems have data documents and analysis on how their systems run, very detailed, tech reports about where their vulnerabilities are. And they're being honest. They're just disclosing how their system works as they should. But somebody who says, oh, you use company XYZ will go pull their technical data, right? Design an AI system to fill in those gaps and start submitting it through us, getting scores that aren't reflective of not AI. And we won't know until months later, all because we were a little too forthcoming in identifying who
Yeah.
we work with and exposing ourselves to, to that. So
You don't want to equip them to game the system.
exactly. My favorite, if you got time for it, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but like the World Chess Association, the governing body that governs all international chess and has their rankings and has the international competitions and grandmasters, the body, right, has had a problem for a long time with people cheating with computer assisted chess moves. And they adopted maybe 3-4 years ago a strategy to deal with the cheating that says that when they interrupt a match or when they review a match later and they determine that they suspect cheating, that's the end of it. There's no appeal, and they will not under any circumstances tell you how they believe you cheated for that exact reason. Because the chess players and the computers are too smart. And if they say, well, we use program ABC, the next time they cheat, they're going to know that they're looking for this and they're going to do something different. So they as a rule don't disclose at all how they arrived at their conclusion. We don't go that far, but there's a lot of good reason to withhold information in this sort of context about where the problems are.
That's quite interesting too, because I think government entities, when they make decisions on particular matters on behalf of individuals or companies, not revealing why they decided that something is or is not, acceptable or whatever term you want to use, is something that's of great concern, right? When you have decisions that can be made arbitrarily and people can be treated unequally in the absence of transparency. And yet transparency gives the bad actors the tools to, you know, to cheat. So there's a balance there, right?
There's the balance. I was just going to do the seesaw motion. Yeah, it's a trade off with empowering people who want to do bad stuff between and being transparent about your decision making, and that's a tough place to be. But yeah, coming back to our business, that's where hopefully being sort of AI agnostic and not having a finger on the scale. It doesn't matter to me or to us whether your particular document is 99% human or 99% AI. We get not a penny more. It's irrelevant to us in that outcome. Uh, you know, we just want good information to be available. Hopefully that has some merit that people can see. Like I'm not winking at one side of the argument.
I totally appreciate that. On the other hand, it would be relevant to you, I think, if you knew that an author who contributed a work that was 100% human, got ranked as 60% human or something like that, and you would want to know, vice versa, right? You would want to know something that was AI got ranked human. So I think you do have to care,
Oh, no, we care.
but
No, I just don't, you
you
know
don't
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
skin in the
Yeah.
game, right?
No, no, exactly right. We don't
Yeah.
have skin in the game as to what the outcome is. And I'm going to jinx myself here. I know it, and I'm kicking myself as I say it. But so far, we've scanned. I can check right now to see if we've gone over 8 million words scanned in our system. We were at 7.9 something earlier today. We have gotten not a single complaint about accuracy. Um, no one has written to us saying your system's wrong. Um, the closest we had to that was a book author who um, was actually their agent. Their agent ran the manuscript of an author, and it came back, I forget, 98.8 human, like really high human, couple of problematic areas. No big deal for us. Um, but the author insisted through her agent that every word was human written and what was happening in the system. And I said, well, we can figure out because we do have access to the receipts, right? We know where it's flagged. We know why it's flagged. We just don't share that with people in our system. So I went back and pulled it and I said, I sent him the report and I said, every single point of this sort of deduction is in this 1.5 page summary before the book starts. The rest of the book is 100%. It's all flagging on this, and got back a day later from the agent. Oh yeah, she used one of the AI agents to summarize the book and forgot she had put it in that thing. And I said, look, no problem. Just take that out, send a new version with it out. We'll scan that. It'll get 100%. And it did. And everybody was happy. So The one complaint we sorta got about accuracy was just that they had material in there that they not remembered they put in some version. So, um, but it'll, maybe maybe that's an interesting story, maybe not.
It is an interesting story because it's just like the computer to say the one thing that was wrong was the human's fault. I mean, I'm kidding, but sort of it is funny because human error happens all the time, right? And so it's interesting it finds that. I really appreciate the mission behind what you're doing. I think it's really interesting and helpful, and it's forward thinking. In an era like where the bodies themselves don't automatically address this issue, and the laws don't properly address this issue, is certainly not consistently and not globally. So there's definitely a need for what you do. I'm curious if you have uh, some sort of introductory way for people to try it out and get an opportunity to know that this is a good thing for them to start using, as opposed to just sort of, hey, go and pay the fee and do the thing. Is there like a free trial or anything like that?
We don't, but we can do that right now. Um, I could, however you want to. I know we're live on the pod, but I could give you a code that they could get from you if they want to try it for free, or if they want to email us directly and mention your podcast, we'll be happy to give them a code to waive the fees on a trial, on a kick the tires, see how it works. Happy to do that. Yeah, that's no problem at all. Uh, or both. We can do both. You can have a code, or they could request the code from us. Um, should I give the email address to ask for it? Just email support at verifymywriting.com. Mention the podcast here, and we'll get you a code to try it. That's no problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I will definitely give it a try. I'm just trying to think of which thing I'm going to use. It's probably not going to be a confidential client document, but something maybe I'm putting out in the public. But Derek, really appreciate your being here. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this important work that you're doing, and hopefully people take advantage of it. So thank you so much for being here.